Shiki is a depressed addict who was sent to the snowy town of Hokkaido as punishment for being antisocial. But there, he met some chicks with the big tits who brightened his life. It was winter when Shiki arrived in the city. He received a text from his father literally saying that his job was more important than him. But Shiki, being a curious kid from the big city, told his limo driver he'd walk the rest of the way. When he stepped outside, he admired the snow. But when he inhaled, he saw the afterlife because his eggplant almost froze. That's when he realized how dangerous Hokkaido was. While walking, he pulled out his phone to check the address of his house. But he put it back, thinking his battery might run out at any moment. Then he saw a Jaru girl with blonde hair. She was one of those people who wears basically nothing in the winter. She's wearing her school skirt as if it was summer. The girl immediately noticed him. He's scared talking to a girl, but he doesn't want to freeze to death, so he decided to ask for directions. He noticed her nose and eyes were red, but he cut off her thoughts by pointing out the way he was headed. He left right away because he almost creamed himself from staring at her bare legs. But the girl stopped him and said it would take 3 hours on foot to get home. It turned out he was in a small town before the next city of Kitami, and no buses passed through that area. She added it would take 30 minutes to book a ride, and that taxis don't come here normally. She then suggested they wait together for the bus, with the nearest town being 5 minutes. He thanked the girl, and she shies away from the praise, so she asked where he was from. He answered that he had just moved from Tokyo. The girl shouted in alarm, as she always wanted to go there. When he said he moved because of his family matters, she understands. He notices her weird accent, and she felt he probably thinks the people here are super lame compared to Tokyo. But he said it's actually the opposite. He liked the simple environment. Internally, he reveals the reason he left was partly because he was bullied for being lame. Luckily, no one here knows how lame he is, so he's relieved. Then she asked how old he was, and he said he was 16. She jumped and said she was the same age and that they would be going to the same school of Hokurio. Suddenly, she hugged him, and the shy boy wondered how she sneaked up on him like this. The girl said she was cold, asking if he wanted her to stop, and the boy made a tactical decision, saying, "It's fine," as something soft and squishy is touching him. She told him to act natural, but she started sneezing. Then he noticed her playing with her nose like a waterbender, and it surprised him. As time went by, our protagonist began to feel happy for talking to a girl, but the girl was calling out to him. She didn't like being ignored, so she put ice in his shirt, making him dance like a worm. At least he managed to make the girl laugh. Seeing her smiling face mesmerized him, and he accidentally told her she was beautiful. But the girl punched him and said that wasn't cool, but liked it. The bus arrived, and as she was about to board, he asked her name. She said her name was Fuyuki Minami. She said goodbye before the bus left, leaving the boy lost in his fantasy. When his father texted him again, he realized he had forgotten to ride the bus. Later in class, he's introduced as the transfer student Shiki Tsubasa. He looks around and doesn't see the girl from earlier, assuming she's in another class. He shakes his head as it doesn't matter, as he always had a thing for girls with dark hair who were neat and the serious type. Just then, the girl he's thinking about walks in late to class and jumps on him as she remembers him, causing a scene in class. It turns out they're sitting next to each other. When she called him by his first name, he was shocked. As class went on, Shiki shivered, noticing that most of the students were wrapped up in blankets. Fuyuki gave him one of hers, making him feel the warmth from her body heat, thinking it smelt nice, but he started to have dirty thoughts. When he returned the blanket, she smelled it. Shiki is weirded out. Her first response is to smell it. He apologized if it stank, but she said it smelled nice, as it's like if the two of them were smushed together. She asked him for a favor for giving him the blanket, being he has to walk her home with her clinging to his arm. He tries to ask her why she's so close, but she says they're close now, so there's no problem. Internally, Shiki thinks about how they only met yesterday. While walking, she asked if he had a girlfriend, and of course, he denied it. She also asked about the ideal places for dating in Tokyo. He gave her good date spots like the districts like Harajuku and Shin-Okubo. She's shocked that he doesn't go to Shibuya or Marukuyu, so he explained that Tokyo had more shopping districts, as most people want to walk and talk or get snacks. Then he asked about the town, but she explained that it was too cold, so people usually played indoors instead of going outside. He thought maybe she was hinting at inviting him over to her house. They were getting close to the station, so he said goodbye. But she invited him to her house the next day, as they had no school tomorrow. This was the start of him becoming a harem protagonist. The next day, he arrived at her house and rang the doorbell. She told him to come in, greeted him, and said they were lucky since her parents weren't home. This gave him more bad thoughts about the things they could do, like play Connect 4. She brought him to the living room, which was a little warm because of the heater. While he was relaxing, the girl teased him with her feet, making him yell out. Afterward, she posted up and asked what they could do with their time. But since he didn't answer, she decided to get a drink, and the idiot just accepted whatever she gave him. It was a milk yogurt drink that tasted great. As she went back to the fridge, she suddenly screamed and said she had spilled her drink, a sight that startled him. Then she left, saying she needed to change while he tried to calm his racing heartbeat. But she came back wearing a tight tank top that almost made him bust, so he had to distract himself by putting on a movie. That turned out to be a bad idea too, because her bare rice cakes were in plain sight, forcing him to close his eyes. Internally, he thought this girl would be the death of him. Unfortunately, the movie had a rated scene. He heard strange sounds and thought she was getting into the groove. But when she touched him, he freaks out, but turns to see false alarm. He realized she had fallen asleep. He doesn't see how she can be so trusting with having a guy in her house that she barely knows. Seeing her so unbothered, he figured he had been friend-zoned already, so he decided to cover her up. When she woke up, she asked what happened and the movie, and he tells her she fell asleep. And it was cold, so he covered her. He's about to leave as it's late. She handed him his jacket back. As he was walking away, she ran after him and apologized for falling asleep on him, as she didn't plan that. But Shiki quickly wrapped his scarf around her so she wouldn't get cold. Loki was smooth with it. He gave her his scarf, and she wrapped it closer to herself and blushed and sees him sneeze and likes his chivalrousness. She comes closer. She invited him to dinner and takes his hand. One day, Fuyuki finished her snowman and posted it on Instagram. While walking to class, she spotted Shiki and suddenly shouted into his ear, making him freak out. She noticed he was staring at a poster for the Winter Festival, so she asked if he was interested, and she replied that she wanted to check it out that weekend. Hearing that, she acted like he was courting her and agreed to go with him, much to the noob's surprise. At Fuyuki's house, she was having dinner with her family. Her mother suggested that Fuyuki and Momo accompany her over the weekend, but Fuyuki said she already had a date. Shiki then received a text asking to meet at the train station. To confuse his brain even more, she sent him a cute picture of herself and a snowman. It was a sight that drained his life points, but somehow he managed to recover. But then he saw her dress up for the date, and it made his nose bleed dry. Then he started rambling about the event, but she warned him not to expect too much. They arrived at the venue, and he's amazed by the booths and other events. She doesn't think it's much and is about to lower his expectations, but to her shock, he likes it and is looking forward to it. They went to the ice sculpture segment. She forced him to pose with a snowman, but the protagonist was hypnotized by her fragrance. Even though the picture came out ugly, she decided to keep it. Next went to a food stall where he ordered a sugar-coated corn dog. Fuyuki had a skewer, but after seeing his food, she wanted a bite. She opened her mouth and begged for a bite of his meat, waiting for him to feed her. She bit into it and thought it was good, but he couldn't stop staring at the snack as to eat it. Normally would be an indirect kiss. She watched him as he ate it, as she knew what he was thinking. They continued the festival and enjoyed themselves. When they sit down to rest, he talks about his time in Tokyo, and then thanks her for taking him. Fuyuki blushes. She gets back to thank him too. She never realized it until now, but she loves her town and loves exploring it with him. But just then, she trips and falls. Shiki rushes to save her and catches her, and they breathe heavy, close enough to kiss. When it's over, they're both embarrassed, and he asked her on another date, and she teases him, asking if he's so desperate to hang out with her again. The following week at school, she pressured him to have lunch with her, and to his surprise, still obsessed with the festival's treats, bringing instant ramen for lunch. Then she continued making noodles and even explained the trick she used to cook them in just 3 minutes, with a deep soup telling him to eat up. She feed him and said she was returning the favor from the festival. When she asked what was in his bento, he replied it was just something normal. He opened it, and she snapped a picture of it. After eating, she's amazed, asking how the meat was so juicy, asking who made it, thinking it came from God. But Shiki said no, it was made by his grandma, being stewed pork. Shiki thanks her and then starts to speak about his sheltered life. For example, never eating cup ramen, being at a girl's house, having many first-time experiences with her. She was surprised. Then she asked if he was one of the rich kids, but he broke her fantasy by saying he was just an ordinary boy. But he was one of those rich kids who didn't know he was rich. To confirm, she suggested walking him home, and of course, he couldn't refuse. On the way to his house, she bent down to a snow fort and told him to come inside, as some kids might have built it, but Shiki was too busy getting a nosebleed. After that, she held his arm and pulled him inside, started acting mischievous, and asked if it was his first time. They were close, breathing heavy, and it was looking like an adult game of Twister. The dialogue didn't help, as they were saying words like, "It's warm, too tight, and gotta pull out," and "stop moaning." Eventually, Shiki got up, and the first thing he sees is the voice of a disapproving grandma who was disgusted they did that in public, who happens to be Shiki's grandma, and he had no way to explain it to her. Then Fuyuki made it worse for appearing and grabbed him, saying she wished he had enjoyed his first time more. Shiki wants her to stop talking, as this is awkward first meeting. The grandmother was shocked, but Fuyuki wasn't bothered. She even added that she had eaten the delicious bento she made for Shiki. The grandmother was annoyed, but the more she talked, the more she eased up and thought the girl was not a bad girl. When the grandma asked about their relationship, Shiki, embarrassed, quickly shouted that they were just classmates. But Fuyuki looked disappointed, and the grandma and Shiki noticed. Afterwards, she said she had an appointment, and when Shiki said he'd follow, he ended up leaving her behind. His grandmother didn't like people who were open about relationships, but Fuyuki couldn't take a hint. She said it was dangerous to use an umbrella when it's snowing. She gave an example of her own grandmother passing away because she broke her hip in the snow doing the same thing. As the grandmother closed the umbrella, Fuyuki asked which direction their house was. When they pointed straight ahead, she said the crossword was messed up due to ice and volunteered to show them a better route. After that, she handed her bag to Shiki, forcing him to act like a gentleman, and the pair started to bicker a bit, and the grandma saw the connection and allowed her to come with them. At her house, she was clearly shocked to see that he lived in a mansion, which made her want to leave early. But the grandmother told her to stay, and while she was bringing in tea, the grandma thought she was going soft after all this time, as she doesn't normally do this. But she thinks her grandson likes this girl, and Fuyuki seems like a good girl. When the grandmother is about to enter, she is taken aback with the girl taking pictures of the big room with Shiki trying to stop her, and then she overhears the girl shout how she knew she was right. He's rich. And the grandmother decided to keep an eye on her as she's showing gold digger tendencies. She also noticed how Shiki smiled like a child, and she restrained herself from ruining it. The next day, Shiki gets the class desk seat arrangements and sees he's behind Fuyuki, but would be next to a girl named Akino-san. The girl in question is playing a phone game intensely. The next day, the class was on the bus. Fuyuki was excited as they were going skiing, while Shaki admitted that he was actually scared. She told him to relax as they'd show him how it's done. While they were talking, she noticed his seatmate, being Sayuri-chan, sitting beside Shiki, and asked if she was excited for the trip. But Sayuri was a total ice queen, ignored her, so she answered her own question, making her feel reserved. Shiki noticed this and questioned what's going on, as Fuyuki is friends with everyone. So what's different with Sayuri? The two have no tact, as Shiki whispers, asking what's wrong, and the two talk as if Sayuri is not right there in a hushed tone. Fuyuki is desperate to be friends with Sayuri, as she believes they can be excellent gal friends together, seeing the great potential to be a gyaru in Sayuri. Fuyuki geeks out, gushing over Sayuri as she's super adorable, her hair, the style, her aristocratic features being utterly captivating the silent beauty. Fuyuki to start analyzing Sayuri. Shiki didn't see how she could be a gal, as she's the total opposite as typical gals, but the more he looked, Shaki was captivated, with Sayuri being his ideal type in a girl, but he didn't say this. Fuyuki saw him staring like a lost puppy, which made Fuyuki angry, so she stopped talking. They arrived at the location, and after the teacher gave instructions to everyone, they would split up in groups of beginners. Shiki didn't know where to go as a total beginner, and the teacher paired him up with Sayuri. They were left alone, and Shiki thought this was his chance to talk to her and maybe bridge the gap between her and Fuyuki. But as he tried to get close and start a conversation, Sayuri put in her earbuds. The guy, though, continued praising her hairstyle. She began to walk, and Shiki, being a beginner, watched her closely to copy her movements. She ended up falling, though feeling embarrassed. Shiki went over to check on her, saying sorry as he was trying too hard on focusing. Sayuri, frustrated, got up on her own, wobbling, not wanting to be here. That's when Fuyuki swooped in like a professional doing a flip and reinforced how Sayuri felt useless compared to her. Shaki told her she was amazing, but the teacher scolded her for separating from the group and doing tricks, so he quickly left, making her leave them again. Afterward, Sayuri asked Shaki if he was courting Fuyuki, but he denied it. Still, Sayuri seemed to sense something was going on. After that, she kept calling Fuyuki the famous, perfect, popular girl. Sayuri resented Fuyuki. She was loud, party girl, outgoing, and a jaru, with Shiki saying that Sayuri is a loner. Sayuri sees it as Fuyuki having everything she wasn't. Meanwhile, Fuyuki met a kid in the expert course, but instead of taking her away, she volunteered to go down the dangerous slope with him. On the other side, the teacher apologized for letting them do as they pleased. When Shaki asked what time lunch break was, the teacher admitted that the other students were already on lunch break, meaning he had forgotten about them. When Shaki got to the cafeteria, he realized he hadn't brought his chopsticks, so he went back to the bus, only to see Sayuri naked. Both of them blushed, and he was replaying what he saw in his head with his hormones running wild. It was only worse when he started to voice his thoughts, making her feel so embarrassed. She wanted a pothole to swallow her. He quickly tries to run back to the cafeteria because his imagination was simulating her body. So he was about to leave, only for her to grab him and insist he have lunch with her, as she wanted to explain. While eating, he wondered what she wanted to talk about, as she's just been eating, drinking water, not saying a word. Suddenly, she looked at him and said she had an embarrassing condition where she sweated excessively. She was always self-conscious about this and didn't participate in gym class with the others, and eventually she fell behind. She lost confidence, and before she knew it, she was avoiding people and became more of an introvert, which is what she was doing, trying to wipe away some of the sweat on the bus. Shiki heard this, but doesn't get why she told the transfer student she has never talked to. And she told him it was easier to tell him as it's a blank slate. He doesn't know anything about her. Also, he's stupidly uptight to her, making him embarrassed. That's how people see him. Sayuri clarifies that he's not the type to spread rumors or make fun of her. Just then, a notification can be heard coming from her bag, making her jump. Shiki wondered what's the problem. Sayuri was embarrassed and pulled out her Nintendo Switch, explaining it's a game, and then she looked offended, as if he slapped her ancestors, as she tells him the game is Crash Sisters Plus, obviously. The more he talked, the more her Jaru self came out, and she let him play and taught him the game. She even gave him a game to play, but he immediately lost. She started teaching him, though he felt distracted because of her chest pressing against him. She noticed he was staring and took it to mean something else and pulled herself back and thought he might be mad at her for being such a geek. She apologized and said she just wanted to make friends with people. She admitted he was too clingy and didn't know personally space, which creeped everyone out. She finds herself pathetic for retreating her personality behind games, but Shiki didn't think so, as he praised her for trying her best with all his heart, calling her personality unique and great to be around. She blushes as he's good at this. He even asked her to teach him how to play so they could play together, with him wanting to be with her, and she accepted while hiding his embarrassment, saying she just had no choice then but to be his professor, demanding he call her as such. They immediately started a boss battle lesson where she easily won and he praised her. Then she passed it to him and he actually won a game. But she told him not to get too excited since that was only the lowest level. They were about to spend the entire time playing games together when Shiki remembered they were supposed to be skiing, so they went back to the course together. Since the teacher had left them again, they decided to stick together. Just then, Fuyuki looks up and sees the two together, not sure what this means. Then in a softer tone, she asked why he kept insisting on skiing. He said he wanted to try new things when he moved to Hokkaido. She's amazed as she could never be so adventurous. But he gave all the credit to Fuyuki, but he started to ramble on how great Fuyuki is, and she pointed out that he must really her then. He tries to adamantly deny it. He answered that they were just friends, but she points out how he must really have it bad if he's defending this that hard. This deep for Fuyuki makes her admit she must have been too suspicious about the girl, as she's always trying to be her friend, so she will try and get along with Fuyuki. They watch the sunset together and are amazed by it. Shiki makes her a bet being a race to the bottom with him, saying if he doesn't fall down once, she will actually try and be friends with Fuyuki. Sayuri laughs, thinking he's a giant simp for the girl, but he says he's not doing this just for Fuyuki, but for also them, as he wants to be friends with Sayuri. She said fine. They remember the tips the useless teacher gave them, and it was working, but then she didn't know how to stop. He braced himself in having to catch her, but Fuyuki appeared beside her instead, guiding her. The tips work, and the two are safe. Just then, the teacher finally decided to show up and started yelling at them as who gave them permission to ski alone. Shiki goes to talk to him. Sayuri wants to go with him as it's also her fault, but he shuts her down as he's taking responsibility for her, which makes Fuyuki laugh at them. Sayuri took the chance to apologize to Fuyuki for being overly cold towards her, which led to the two of them becoming friends in the end. Even so, Fuyuki felt a little jealous as those two are so close, sleeping next to each other. The next day, Shaki was wobbling down the hall of his home as his body was too sore from skiing. While he thought about skipping school, the grandmother said he had to endure this blizzard in order to be considered a true Hokkaido citizen. So he was determined to prove himself, so he went outside. But it was worse than a training arc, and he screamed in pain. He couldn't see ahead of him as his joints stiffened. He thought of Fuyuki, imagining how she would probably overcome the blizzard, and that gave him extra motivation. Still, he heard the honking of a car and collapsed. He thought he was about to be run over like roadkill. He saw Angel Fuyuki coming to take his soul and was ready to surrender to death, but in reality, it was Fuyuki herself getting out of a car to yell at him, as he can't walk around in a blizzard, as that's reckless. She pulled him inside, where he met her mother. He was stunned to see the woman not believing the mother was a Gyaru, and even thought maybe she was her sister and thought the bloodline of Gyaru runs strong here. Fuyuki made a joke apologizing that their car might be too small for him as he must be used to bigger cars since he lives in a mansion. The mother is alarmed, asking if this was the rich kid that lived in a castle called Fuyuki by me. Because of this, Fuyuki's mother jokingly tried to flirt with him, but Fuyuki told her mom to knock it off as he's hers territory. Then, while talking, Fuyuki touches him and Shiki whines in pain, making Fuyuki concerned. She explains it's due to his body being sore from the skiing. With that, Fuyuki guessed it was probably a bad idea to get too rough with him. Shiki thought it was a little sus how she said it, but the mother makes it worse, saying she knows Michan has the stamina for it, saying she could pound it all night without a break. Internally, Shiki was wondering what's up with this mom. Fuyuki tried to stop her, but the mother didn't let it go, and Fuyuki was greatly embarrassed. Fuyuki had to threaten her with a deadly glare before she stopped teasing. Then she asked if it always snowed like this in Tokyo. Shiki replied that a blizzard like this would trigger a public holiday. He asked why there weren't people outside, and she explained that everyone was used to the weather, but in the winter that's different as everyone has someone take the kids to school or get the bus. Even Fuyuki admits the winter is no joke. Mai also explains that winter clothes here are in high demand, so the prices to be warm are expensive. The Rizzlers said they looked cute, making both of them blush tomato red. They were almost at the school, and before getting out of the car, Mai promised to drive him again if he needed a ride. Before her daughter left, she applauded her on making that play back here to ride in the car with him, and she blushed, but didn't deny it. After they reached the hallway, Shiki was gasping for breath, which made Fuyuki concerned. Just then, they saw Sayuri walking down the hall. The moment Fuyuki spotted her, she rushed over to give Sayuri-chan a hug. However, that caused Sayuri pain, and she leaned against the wall for support while trying to endure it. Shiki said he was also struggling since they had overexerted themselves skiing. The moment Sayuri and Shiki started talking, the change was noticeable. They began bonding and unintentionally left Fuyuki out, which made her cut in and say she couldn't handle them getting along like that because she was getting jealous. Sayuri blushed and insisted it wasn't like that, which only made them seem more suspicious. In class, Fuyuki noticed that Shiki already had his own blanket with him. Then she opened her jacket to reveal her impressive assets and showed that her chest was covered with warmers, asking if he had bought those too. However, his eyes were immediately drawn to her huge chest, so he had to look away before little Johnny woke up. Afterwards, she gave him one of the warmers. He reflected on his decision to move from Tokyo and felt happy about it because he became friends with hot, popular girls. While they were talking, she got excited when he used local slang. Suddenly, Sayuri appeared and said he shouldn't learn anything from Fuyuki because she was insane. Sayuri also felt that he was hanging around Fuyuki for more obvious reasons, like her giant chest. Fuyuki accused Sayuri of being just a regular Hokkaido native, but Sayuri argued that she was also born in the town yet didn't have an accent. Shiki said many locals don't do anything that makes them stand out, meaning Fuyuki was simply different. Shiki was about to notice the console Sayuri was holding, so he said he wanted to play if that was okay, and she answered, "Okay, let's go." He also asked if Fuyuki wanted to learn from Sayuri too, and of course, she agreed. They planned to meet at the mall. Later, they settled in a quiet corner where Shiki noticed that it wasn't as crowded as in Tokyo. Soon, they got hooked on clearing different game levels. When Shiki went to the bathroom, Fuyuki asked Sayuri to go shopping with her. Sayuri agreed to split the bill for contact lenses since they were usually expensive. Then she told Fuyuki that she was such a kind girl even though she was a gal, which flustered her. But then Shiki came back, so they stopped talking. The two girls bonded over buying makeup and other products, and eventually it was time to head home. None of them really wanted to go, but Fuyuki still suggested they take a picture at a photo booth. That night, a focused Shiki was doing his homework but didn't know when it was due, so he decided to check with Fuyuki since she might know. While texting her, he turned his phone around to look at the picture of the three of them, but she immediately replied that she was taking a bath. Then she sent a picture of her butt, hoping it would ruin his concentration, but he still replied respectfully. So she turned it up a notch and let him get a look at her chest. She thought that might be a bit much, but surely he'd get the hint. Yet again, he just praised her dedication instead. He thought his blood pressure would finally return to normal, but then she asked for a video call. He saw everything, and she was happy to see him stammer. That was exactly the reaction she wanted. She was amused by how flustered he got. He almost forgot he was supposed to ask her about the homework. That made her panic since she hadn't even started it. However, she had to drop the phone before he could see the eighth wonder of the world. But Fuyuki was so shocked because she thought she had gone too far. Her mom even asked if she was okay or if she'd be having grandkids too soon. The next day, the teacher scolded her in front of the class for not doing the homework. Later, they went to a karaoke spot where Fuyuki took the mic, showing off her naturally good singing voice. However, the lyrics seemed to be directed at Shiki. When Sayuri asked if Shiki liked karaoke, he said he used to go with his family but never had friends to go with. When he asked Sayuri the same, she said she went alone. Shiki stumbled over his words, trying not to make her feel bad for being a turbo loner, but his sincerity only made it sting more. Things got wild when both Sayuri and Shiki were overwhelmed by the sheer number of song choices. Fuyuki joined them and offered to pick songs for everyone, but in the end, she just pushed Sayuri and Shiki to sing. For the first time, Shiki and Sayuri were surrounded by people their age who talked to them normally, like friends. The guys invited Shiki to a study group for exams, and the girls called Sayuri cute. Fuyuki got distracted by an ad on her phone about Valentine's Day. The girls saw it and started talking about plans, which made everyone embarrassed since they were all single and felt like losers. One of the guys said he wasn't interested, but then asked Fuyuki to make him chocolate, and she agreed, much to Shiki's horror, thinking this guy was going to steal his girl. Then he heard that Fuyuki always made a huge batch of chocolates for people. One of the girls said that last year, Fuyuki made 60 batches for the class. Sayuri looked at Shiki and saw he was relieved that Fuyuki did this for everyone. When they asked Sayuri if she'd make chocolates, she said she'd rather save up to buy soap. Then the guys asked if Shiki was expecting any gifts, but he said he could only count on his grandma. After the party, Shiki was left with Fuyuki and Sayuri. At the same time, they both yelled out to him, wanting to know if he had fun. When he said he did, Fuyuki promised to always invite him, and Sayuri, feeling possessive, promised the same. As they were walking home, Sayuri lagged behind to look at Valentine's candy, thinking she might finally have someone to give it to. After a day of playing video games, she felt she had to act and went to the mall. But she ended up sneaking around awkwardly. Coincidentally, she ran into Fuyuki buying chocolate-making ingredients. Sayuri lied and said she was there to buy nail polish, but she was caught immediately since her nails were freshly done. She ended up forcing herself to buy cosmetics instead. She knew Fuyuki really liked that stuff, so she asked her to help pick things out, which delighted Fuyuki. After shopping, Fuyuki asked what kind of chocolates Sayuri liked, and she said fruit-flavored ones. As Fuyuki walked away, Sayuri couldn't lie anymore and shyly blurted out that she wanted to join her in buying chocolate. Fuyuki happily dragged her along. After the trip, Sayuri confronted Fuyuki about Shiki and asked if she was planning to give him special chocolates. Fuyuki tried to dodge the question. As they walked home, both girls thought about giving Shiki something special for Valentine's. Later that night, Sayuri was nervous about preparing chocolates when Fuyuki texted her. Fuyuki called and started coaching her through it. The first step was cutting the chocolate, then adding fresh cream to a bowl. Sayuri treated it like a game, completing each level. When she asked about Fuyuki's progress, she found out the girl was basically a pro-level pastry chef, trying to beat her record of 60 by making 70 this year. But while Fuyuki was doing this for fun, she knew Sayuri had a more serious reason and asked who she planned to give hers to. They both knew. But just as Sayuri was about to admit it, Fuyuki spilled her supplies and ruined everything. Sayuri could hear the devastation in her voice, even though Fuyuki downplay it. In class the next day, Shiki noticed Fuyuki wasn't as cheerful as usual. At school, a crowd gathered to get Fuyuki's chocolates, but were disappointed when, instead of homemade, she gave out store-bought ones. Fuyuki played it off like that was her plan from the start. One of the popular boys said something rude and walked off, and Sayuri stepped in, telling him if she ever heard him disrespect Fuyuki again, she'd cut his manhood off, terrifying him. Throughout the day, Fuyuki seemed off. When she was alone with Shiki, she broke down and confessed everything, feeling like she'd let everyone down. Shiki didn't know what to say, so he acted. Instead, he started playing the piano, revealing a hidden talent. Sayuri overheard and understood the truth. Fuyuki felt better when he played her a love song, and he blushed. Then Sayuri walked over and offered her handmade chocolates to Fuyuki, saying she made them for her. Fuyuki tackled her with joy, ready to marry her. Then she offered a smaller box to Shiki. The three friends ate chocolate together.